Go ahead, Ms. Buxton. And it is item number, what's the item number on it?
4E.
Sure.
13.1.
13 point, yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. 13.1.
So we pull.
Go ahead.
EJ, can we pull up the plan?
Go ahead.
Are we starting?
Is Mrs. Buxton unmuted?
Yes.
Melody, you wanna get us started?
Yes. So I guess I'll start. I reached out to, Ms. Buxton, couple weeks ago in preparation for this Board of Health meeting. And so we talked about, possible compensation for non-exempt employee. And I also asked about whether the governor was going to lift the freeze on the CEC for classified employees. And, that discussion led to the discussion about, employee retention and, compression issues. So from there, we talked about a potential, retention compression adjustment plan for the employees. And I submitted the, draft plan to Ms. Buxton for review. And, I believe she had a chance to look at, and that's why I invited her to come join the board to share her insight and perhaps give us some guidance on how we should proceed from this point forward. So, Ms. Buxton?
So, did you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, but everyone please mic when they're not speaking, so we don't get feedback. Thank you.
Well, good, thank you. Thank you for giving me the time, Madam Chairman, members of the board. It's good to be able to visit with you again. It's been a couple of years since I've been in front of you. I hope everybody's well, and I appreciate certainly all of the efforts made by this board, as well as everyone on your staff through this pandemic. And you all need to be very proud of yourselves. We're all very thankful for everything you're doing. Just kind of give you a little bit of background. If you remember, I think that the first orders that was issued statewide were in, I think it was March 13th. And so when we started looking at those things, we also looked at the budget. So no one knew what was going to happen with the budget. So if you'll remember, right before COVID, we had a 2.9% unemployment rate. The legislature had advanced a change of employee compensation law that basically gave a 2% increase based on merit to all state employees, which would include the public health district employees as well. And so that was, so the legislature agreed to that, and the governor signed it, and so that would have gone into effect as of July 1. And so once the pandemic hit, by April, our unemployment rate was approximately 11.9%. And going, and it may have actually dipped further a few times in those months in April and potentially in May. So at that time, the governor issued on March 26th, a letter to all state agencies freezing salaries and then a hiring freeze. And as you know, the healthcare workers and the health districts, as well as health and welfare and many of our, and some other essential employees, the hiring freeze was actually not in place, and we had a process by which the Division of Financial Management and DHR would also work with all agencies with regard to the need for hiring and raises in order to make sure we had enough workers. So that really didn't affect you guys as much as it did some other agencies. But the raise freeze kind of was kind of across the board. So on October 8th, Governor Little came out with a letter releasing the compensation increases, as well as releasing the freeze on hiring. So in doing that, it gave an opportunity for agencies to kind of look at where they are with regard to personnel dollars left in their coffers. Because I'm gonna back up a little bit, so the 2% change in employee compensation raise across the board for all 25,000 state employees was frozen as well as of March 26th. And part of the reason for that is because no one has a crystal ball, and still don't, certainly not then. So we decided that it would not be prudent to give employees a raise and then either have to roll it back or take it back or furlough or lay off people because we didn't have the money coming in. So those were the concerns, and so that's why the 2% CEC was not enacted across the board. So right now, we do have an opportunity, and the governor's letter of October 8th said, I'm gonna release these freezes, especially with regard to raises, but I want you to look at raises in a manner where you're looking at retention and hard to fill, hard to recruit for positions. And so part of retention that we know across the state is that there's compression. But one thing that the CEC, that was enacted last year was raising the salary bands or the pay bands across the state by 2%. So when that happens, it creates some more compression. And compression, so everybody knows, is where you have a person that's in a pay band and they're paid, I'm gonna give an example of $20 an hour, and they've been in the state 3 or 4 years, or maybe $20 an hour, and then the pay bands, move up 2 or 3%, in this position 2%. So then other people who may not have been working as much, their pay raise will go up to make sure it meets the minimum pay band. So they get closer with people, so they might be making $19.75 an hour, and so they're getting close for each other. And so then we hire new people, and they're coming in at either the $20 an hour, $19.75 an hour, and all of a sudden, we have people that have been in the state longer, but they're being paid at the same amount that people that are coming in at or have less time in service, and they have the same the same good work history, like we've got an Achieves rating or a solid sustain rating or even an exemplary rating. So that's called compression. And compression, if I get one complaint about compression a day, I get 50. So, that's one thing. It does cause morale problems. And when we're in a situation like you guys have been in, where, people are just, there's lots of options for them. They can go work at the hospital, or go work for a clinic or something like that. One of the things that we looked at with the governor's October 8th letter was we usually don't look at time in service as something that we would consider with regard to raises, but in this year, we're looking at that only as it relates to compression. So, Melody's put together a proposal to address the compression and also address that you only give a certain raise, like if you've been here 10 years, you might get a 3.5% raise if you have a solid sustained performance. And then, so basically you're getting, if you've been here 3 to 10 years, you might get 3%, and if you're Achieves, you might get 3%. But those types of percentages are based on merit, on how their evaluation is, and also based on time of service. So, the proposal that Melody has provided, we're going to ask that she consider a small adjustment to it to make a different percentage in each category, to show that if you get an exemplary, you're gonna get a little bit more money, even if you're 10 years plus, or if you're 1 to 2 years, you'll get more money than somebody who just gets an Achieve. And if you have does not achieve performance standard, then you get no raise at all, which is consistent with statute. So with that, I'm happy to ask for questions about compression and why this is the year to address compression, because we usually don't allow something like that with regard to the use of the CEC and part of the compression got a little bit harder to work with because that CEC was not, implemented as of July 1. And then we do have some, requests for some bonuses, and then those look like those are, meritorious and that we would approve those.
Questions from the board? So far?
Madam Chair, this
Yes,
is,
Melody?
Melody. Thank you, Susan, thank you for, your remarks. It really helps us understand why, this is, the governor is doing, and recommending, and really appreciate your guidance on this. We will make the adjustment on the different ratings to, change the percentage to reflect the performance. We can certainly do that. And also.
And I'll talk to you after the meeting, Melody,
Okay.
kind of give you the numbers that we were considering.
Absolutely. And also, I wanted to point this out. I had Jeremy put together some examples of, compression. Jeremy, you wanna take over
Yeah.
and just explain?
So, what Susan was
I'm
talking,
gonna email this to you.
what Susan was talking about with compression, so I have some examples, just some quick ones I could pull together.
And these
So-
are real life
This,
examples.
Jeremy?
Yes, so these are real life examples of what's occurring currently at the health district. So we could talk about, the first one in orange is a nursing position, so we have, Monica, who's been here 4 years, so it shows years in class 4, her pay rate's $24.44. And then you have Tiffany, who's a brand new employee who hasn't been here a year yet, or hasn't even passed her probation, she's making $23.49. So when she comes off of probation and gets the 5% bump that we've agreed to, she's gonna pass Monica, right? Who's been here 4 years. And the reason is the state has, in the last 4 years, moved the pay scale every year. So they moved it 3%, then they moved it 3%, then they moved it 3%, and then this year they moved it 2%. And in those years,
Yeah, and Jeremy, let me, if you don't mind, let me
Sure.
jump on that one. The pay scales have not, they hadn't moved for about 12 or 15
Right.
years until I came in about 4 years ago, so we're still way behind on that, so we're trying not to move them hugely, year to year, but we are still about 10% behind where those pay bands should be.
Right.
So that's why I asked the legislature to move them, in reasonable moves every year instead of just all of them.
Thank you for that clarification. And let's not refer to salaries by name, please.
but, okay, but,
Go by years in class.
Yeah.
okay, so, but in that position, when you have the shift in the pay scale and the CEC matches, so like they shift the pay scale 3% and then the CEC is 3%, then the person essentially is at the same place in their pay scale that they were at the beginning of that year. So if they were at 75%, they're still at 75%. And then they do it again the next year, they stay at 75%. And the next year, they stay at 75%. Does that make sense? They're making more money, but their percentage in their pay scale is the same.
Oh, okay.
So then what happens is if we hire a new person, we're hiring them at 75% of the new pay scale, and they're right there with the person that's been here multiple years. So you see that with the nursing positions. After the new nursing position gets a raise, they're right there, they'll end up making 22 cents more than the current position. So that's a compression problem. So now we have to address that other nursing position by giving them a raise to bump them above that current position we just hired.
And Madam Chair, if I may add, that is not a conversation that employees appreciate, because what they're gonna realize is that the only reason you give them a pay bump is because they felt like they're being undervalued all this time.
Yeah.
Melanie, would you restate that, please? There was somebody with an unmute mic talking and we couldn't hear you.
Okay, so, usually, employees are happy to get a little pay bump. But when I tell the employee the pay bump is due to compression, they're not always thrilled, because what they come to the realization is that somebody is newer is making more of what they're making, even though they've been here, several years longer. And the only reason we're making this adjustment is because they've been underpaid. And it's a real morale booster and make them feel undervalued. And I have to do that multiple times this year.
Right, so,
It's not a great feeling.
so we have that nursing position, then the next example is an environmental health position, which is kind of the same thing. We had this person was here 3 years, just chose to leave. They chose to leave to get a job at another district, which they're gonna start at a higher rate than what we were paying them after they worked here 3 years.
After we invest all the training and, education and make them a high functioning EHS, somebody else gets to benefit all the hard work we put in. So we became kind of a revolving door for training new staff if we don't keep our wages competitive.
But it happens, I mean, anytime you leave, if you leave some state agency and go to another state agency that has a similar hiring, they're gonna pay more based on they're gonna pay you based on the current pay scale. People that have been hired 4 years ago were hired on a lower pay scale, and then the CEC hasn't kept them up high enough to avoid being compressed by the new employees. So, these are 3 examples. The last one, the public health manager 1, you'll see that we made a compression adjustment to keep her above the current hire. Cause when they came off probation, they were making 26 cents more an hour than the person that had been here a couple of years. So, but those are real life examples from the district, what's currently occurring.
From 3 different divisions.
Yeah, 3 different divisions, well, 2 different divisions, but we have that same problem, CSR positions, we have that same problem with the health educators, any position that we have turnover in, we have these problems are occurring because of what the state has done, which is great, the state's moving their pay scale to adjust to what the current market is,
Yeah.
but what it's doing to us currently is these things, like, it's definitely causing compression problems. And right now, how we're dealing with it is we're dealing with it on an individual basis, so every time we have a compression problem, then we're addressing those employees that are being compressed. And this plan that Susan and Melody worked out is kind of more of a universal way to get a little bit of percentage away from the new hires and into the employees that have worked here for a while.
And also in like competitive, market nurses, in the open market, in the marketplace with shift differential, they can make probably $10 more per hour, instead of $24 an hour. They can probably make $34 an hour, working in hospitals. So we actually recently lost a nurse to the hospital, and we also lost another nurse, to teaching. And nurses are hard to come by in our area. It's a very competitive market, more competitive than Boise area, just because the supply is somewhat limited.
This is Linda. This is something that's been going on for years. We hire some from hospitals and this kind of stuff. We just need to tell them that we work Monday through Friday and this type of thing. It's something that's going on continually. It's really nothing new. It's just that with the state increases and stuff, we haven't really been able to keep up.
Yeah, and
And
the
that's why
hiring thing is
my
definitely not new.
recommendation would be that we have our financial committee of Bob and Brent work with Jeremy and Melody and come up with a recommendation, maybe 2 alternatives, one retention and the other one, bumping up, just to see where it fits with our budget. Because we are in sound financial condition right now and this type of thing. So comments of the board, let's go down alphabetically. Anjanine, what is your comment?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Melody for bringing this to the board and Susan for joining us. I'm fully in support of issuing these, pay increases. I think we went over the budget, pretty extensively at our last agenda item and looking at our financial position. And we do have this money within our budget and also, the funds available. And I do think that, the compression issues need to be taken seriously, but for me, the more important issue is really retention, particularly while we're in a pandemic. And as Linda, you mentioned, our staff, we've always had a problem with retention because there's other places in the market where people can get paid more than our South Central Public Health District. So we need to have a staff that's well-trained and able to do their jobs and not have new employees constantly coming in that, need to be retrained. So I think that this, deserves action as soon. I would be in favor of taking action today so that, we can correct some of these problems and do the best to keep our staff whole, and, not wait until January.
Okay, thank you. Are you talking a retention increase or, the bonus, or which one of the three options are you recommending on, Janine?
If we're able, I'd like to be able to address all of them if we're able to. Maybe we can come back, once you've heard from the other board members and Melody could, clarify, or Susan can, the recommendation for what we can do today, but, I think if we could make all the changes, that would be best.
Thank you. Jeremy and Melody, you probably have some numbers in mind, and if you could maybe kind of just put together some rough estimates of what the cost would be for the retention increases while we go through the rest of the counties, I would appreciate it. Pam,
Yes.
County?
So, yeah, we, absolutely, let's do that. I'll be happy to walk you through this draft plan and all the numbers and the bonus versus percentage increase, all the information you need is already in there, so yeah. After we go down the list for the counties, I'll walk you guys through the plan.
Thank you. Pam, comments?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I really support keeping our people. Having worked in the workforce in a hospital, I saw turnover a lot, and it's very expensive to retrain people. So I'm all for a good retention budget so that we can make sure that our people are happy at work and that they feel like they're giving their worth and getting their worth. I would just like to see us move forward with it as well. I think we have an amazing group of employees and we need to let them know how much we value them.
Okay, Bob, Cassia County?
I don't have any real problems with it as long as it meets the standards of the state, and if Susan says everything is fine with it, I don't know if we have to necessarily have to jump on and act on it today, but we can discuss that. I don't know if it has to be done today. I don't have any problems with the concept though.
Thank you. Helen, Gooding County?
Well, I would agree with the discussion that's gone on, and I know how hard retention is, and in my mind, I keep thinking about law enforcement, because the county goes out and trains them, and they go to the next county, and then they go to the state. And you spend all this money, to Melody's point, you train people, and then all you are is a training ground for the next district, or the next hospital, or whatever. So I think we need to take a good look at this, and maybe accept these recommendations.
Okay, recommendations for which part? Individually or all the recommendations?
All the recommendations.
Thank you. Roy?
I have a couple of questions before I say anything. Do we have a base salary for these different positions? Or do we give, consideration to how many years they worked before they apply
So
to either our county or our?
Yeah, great question. So if somebody is just fresh out of college, no experience, we start them at 75% of the policy. So, but if somebody comes in with some experience, we may give a few percentage adjustment. But, we have a well-established salary policy for the district. It spells out exactly how we hire and what we expected them to be, after 5 to 10 years on the job. So, yes.
Well, if we do that, that's fine. And I think it would be wise for us to reconsider the salaries, of those that have been here a while. So that they, with the, 5% increase after probation, there's no way that the others can catch up, and there's not much difference, we're talking about 20-some cents an hour on some of these, but, if I was the one that, was all of a sudden, 20 cents behind somebody that's just starting in that, I would be upset too.
Yeah. And that's why this plan will address that.
And, I think we need to come up with a plan, but I don't think we have that plan yet today, do we?
Yes, I have it here.
Okay,
13,
and you're
so I'll
gonna
walk
go-
through the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
Roy, were you in favor of all three legs of her plan, or just one, or what is your feelings?
Say that again?
Are you in favor of just the retention portion of the plan, merit bonus, what are you?
Well,
All three
yeah,
legs, just
I am
one?
in favor of, retention.
Yes.
Because, like was mentioned here in Gooding with the police force, they have to go to, get their, what do they call it?
They go to post.
Yeah, post and that. And so, yes.
Thank you. Brant, Twin Falls County?
There's no question about retention, that's a serious issue. And as far as the three parts, I'd like to wait till, we hear from Melody and from Jeremy as far as what they want to present today.
Thank you. Dr. Davis? Has Dr. Davis left? Meeting?
If you want.
He's still showing.
Is he muted?
I was muted, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Good enough. Wanted to give you a chance. Comments?
No questions,
Okay, thank you. Any comments?
no.
Thank you. Okay, good enough, thank you. Durham County retention is a very important thing. I have visited with, various state agencies, this type of thing, retention is the same with them, their issues, this type of thing. Right now with the uncertainty of really getting the COVID dollars totally reimbursed and this type of thing, will it be a permanent retention raise? Will it be a one-time retention bonus? This type of thing. Please keep those things in your mind as we go through these legs. Do we want to commit, to that amount every year? Put in the back of your mind the fact that we only got the small increase last year from the counties. And I have no idea what the counties are going to be feeling financially. They should probably give us the 5 or 6% because of all the work the staff's done, but they have to balance their budget too. So, with that, Melody, if you want to walk through your plan,
5-minute personal debrief.
Yeah,
item 13.0, correct?
13.1, yes. So, Commissioner Ranky just asked for a bio break. Is it okay?
Yes. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We'll
Okay.
reconvene at 3:40.
okay, thank you.